Okay, great. Welcome. This is the using Microsoft Expression Design to design cool mobile experiences on the Zumobi platform. So first of all, welcome. Glad that you're here. We actually are hypersensitive to the fact that it's the last, sort of at this stage in the conference, the risk of DBPPT, death by PowerPoint, is extremely high. So we, in fact, we'll be doing our entire delivery right inside Expression Visual Designer. We won't be, at no point will we double click on the PowerPoint icon. So we'll sort of just be, I created this 11 megapixel zoom canvas that we'll be flying into and out of, and this will kind of help us stay focused and structure our thoughts. So a couple things. First of all, just to frame the session and set appropriate expectations, this session is going to be all about mobile. So if you're interested in mobile, you're in the right place. We're going to be talking about mobile. We're going to actually start at 20,000 feet and talk about mobile concepts and technologies and techniques and what are key things to consider when designing for mobile. And then we're going to dive a little bit deeper and talk about kind of interaction architecture for mobile, give you a couple of examples of things that we've done with partners. We're going to dive a little bit deeper and talk about the Zumobi platform specifically, and then we're going to finish up with just a rapid-fire overview of some of the Zumobi coding environment. And I'll be joined by my colleagues Shannon and Andy, who will be talking through the design and the dev pieces respectively. And again, we'll be living in Expression Design. Though I want to make it clear that what this session, if you're an Expression graphic designer rock star and you're looking here, you're not particularly interested in mobile, but you're here to get tips and tricks on Expression. This might not be the session for you. However, if you're interested in mobile and particularly interested in the Zumobi platform, it is the session for you. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we're super excited, of course, about Silverlight Mobile, but this session is not about Silverlight Mobile specifically. This session is about the Zumobi platform. We certainly support and are enthusiastic about Microsoft's direction around Silverlight Mobile, but that's not the focus of this talk. So just want to set appropriate expectations. So first, just a quick dive into who we are and why you might be interested in what we have to say. I'll kind of just zoom into this. So Zumobi, for those of you who are familiar with Zumobi, is a Microsoft Research spin-out. It's one of the first ever. So I was actually at Microsoft Research for 8 years. I've been working in mobile for over 10 years, really just thinking deeply about novel ways to interact with content on a mobile device and how mobile is a fundamentally different experience than the web. In fact, all three of us that are here speaking work exclusively on mobile. Nothing that we do on dev or design is focused on the desktop web. We're exclusively focused on mobile. So the Zumobi story is interesting because it was born inside the walls of Microsoft Research as part of a 3-year collaborative research partnership with the University of Maryland, specifically Professor Ben Betterson, who's one of the kind of giants in adaptive, scalable, and mobile user interface design. And he's one of the 3 co-founders of Zumobi. We developed this technology inside Microsoft Research. We actually published it at Chi in 2005. We did a talk here at MIX08 all about adaptive user interfaces. Any of you in that talk? 2 years ago, do you remember that talk? Wow, so completely fresh audience. So we actually talked in detail about some of the basic adaptive UI constructs that informed this design direction, and we also talked a little bit about the scripting direction. But then what we did is we packaged it up because we really wanted to make this kind of an exciting mobile advertising play. So we packaged it up and spun it outside of Microsoft Research as part of the IP Ventures program. Very cool program to take Microsoft Research intellectual property and patents, package it up, and then spin it off to be independent entities and kind of drive the venture community. Very, very cool program, kind of the face of a new, more open Microsoft. And Microsoft's been great in bringing this venture to life. But we're really very focused on cross-platform. One of the reasons why we were spun out is because the Zumobi platform is designed specifically to address Windows Mobile, BlackBerry, J2ME, kind of a wide variety of mobile devices. So I want to kind of talk about the team that you'll be hearing from today in this Zoom canvas. So right after me, you'll be hearing from Shannon, actually, just for color. This is Shannon exactly 1 day ago today in the forests of Costa Rica, zip-lining out to a volcano. So she, in addition to being a wild adventurer, she's a very accomplished mobile UI designer, has worked throughout her career at many companies, including Microsoft, on mobile UI design, and is also an independent filmmaker. This is a rotoscope snapshot from one of the films that she's working on with a colleague. She has a very, very kind of broad and wide creative portfolio, but also, again, very focused on mobile. You'll also be hearing today from Andy. So this is actually many of the tiles that you find in the Zumobi gallery were actually created by Andy in Zumobi. He also is a filmmaker, so this is actually a snapshot from one of his independent film projects, a very, very cool piece, the name of which is A Plight. Yeah, very, very cool. Or Blight, I'm sorry. Very cool. Anyway, so that's who you'll be hearing from. My background is really, again, as a mobile analyst and research scientist, and I, together with Ben Betterson and Amy Carlson, wrote one of the first earliest academic papers about adaptive UI and direct manipulation scrolling on a mobile device. Actually, a lot of the principles that now find their way into the iPhone about how you can use a device with direct manipulation of dragging and gestural movement on a device. Also, how to use zooming user interface, the ZUI, as a construct for browsing a large body of information. This was published at CHI in 2005, and I have a background in design on mobile specifically. So with that as a segue, let's dive into kind of what mobile means by kind of talking a little bit about the how, some of the considerations when designing for mobile. So we did actually a fair amount of very, very deep research around mobile user experiences inside the walls of Microsoft Research to think about how mobile is fundamentally different than the desktop. And a couple of things bubble to the surface. So the first thing to keep in mind is that just think about the content in general. You really have to take the content that you're repurposing to a mobile device, and you really have to think about mobile patterns of use. So, in the website world, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to make things sticky. In the mobile world, you should spend time thinking about how to make things bouncy, right? Because when you're mobile, it's really this kind of very impulsive, you're zooming in, you're snacking on a nugget of information, and you're zooming back out. It's not about going there to have a meal. It's about going there to have a quick snack of information, check a sports score, see what the snow conditions are like at your favorite snowboarding mountain. Sort of a little nugget of information. That's very, very key. And we did a ton of research where we designed different tiles, different widgets, different applications to see which ones were most effective. And we found that the most effective ones, the most usable ones, were the ones that provided one piece of very crisp information, very much in the spirit of what we're seeing on Vista sidebar widgets and gadgets on other platforms. That's a very, very poignant concept for mobile. However, there are all kinds of engineering and design constraints. So one of the obvious design constraints when focusing on mobile is that it's a very widely varied platform landscape. There's a lot of different devices out there. If you track any of the mobile blogs and Gadget Gizmodo, you see a tidal wave of new devices coming down the pipeline every single week. So every design decision that you make has to be run through kind of an adaptive UI construct. So there's a couple of frameworks that we look at when we're designing for mobile. So every design decision that you make really has to be informed by orientation independence, landscape, portrait, square. And as part of our SDK, we actually provide a framework for that to make it easier. Zumobi is actually, since we launched in the marketplace on Winmo, and we're really targeted on kind of the higher-end consumer devices, so the devices like the Windows mobile devices that have deep penetration in the consumer segment, so the Blackjack and the Dash, and also the BlackBerry devices like the Pearl and the Curve, the devices that have really high data penetration, but also have really kind of deep penetration in the consumer segment. We're focused on those. So our minimum requirement is you have to have at least 240 pixels on the shortest axis. And that actually is a good baseline because the glass size, that QVGA glass size, is coming down in price so dramatically. It's a really good target. Sometimes it's landscape and portrait, and we do support trios, which are 240 by 240 as well. But we're really looking at that landscape of devices and beyond. We also, of course, are looking at not just output adaptation, but also input adaptation. So one of the tricky things about the zooming user interface that we've designed is, again, every design decision was made informed by it had to work not just effectively, but very efficiently on touchscreen, keypad, QWERTY, and D-pad, because there's different people with different devices and different use patterns. So really our core goal here was that the interface that we designed really had to be fast, fast, fast. So you see that there's a couple things that we did in our interface really to make it very fast. Everything, whenever you're going into and out of a tile, our goal was to be able to, within 3 taps somewhere on the screen, to be able to fly into a specific nugget of information that you want. So I'll actually give you a test drive on the document projector on phone and show you kind of what we came up with. But that was very, very important. The bad news, as we started our engineering quest, is we quickly realized that in the flow of the user experience, kind of in the spirit of, Mahai Chicks and Mahai, you want to keep someone focused on their task, and you don't want to have them have any distractions. Well, not surprisingly, one of the biggest distractions on the mobile patterns of use was not necessarily the pulling down data from the network, because that's actually getting quite fast. It was the connection latency, total deal breaker in the user flow, right? Because you're talking about introducing, best case scenario, sometimes 10 seconds, sometimes as long as 45 seconds into the user's flow, total deal breaker, right? Users' threshold for tolerance for an hourglass is quite low on the desktop. It's really low on a mobile device. So the idea is that we wanted to do everything we could to really minimize that flow. So once the Zumobi application is loaded and kind of in the background, it's constantly trickling down data, very lean and mean. We actually have our own data center that takes the data and crunches it down and sends down a stream to feed each of these widgets, some of which we built, some of which you built, some of which partners have built. And we actually have our own synchronization architecture as part of the platform. So the good news is that you really, you just designate what the sync sets are, and you don't have to worry about all the technical kung fu to manage that synchronization. We also do have local caching. So it's prefetch is one piece of the technology, and local caching. Now, of course, this is the only way any of us in this room would ever think about consuming mobile email, right? The idea of actually waiting for a round-trip network on a mobile device to read an email message is completely asinine. So why should we expect to do that for consumer content when we're consuming widgets or sponsored content? That just didn't make any sense to us. So we did build our own data center, horizontally scalable data center, very architecturally elegant. And we also, on the phone, in the client, have our own sync store that every tile has their own little part of the tree that they can sync to and from. Very, very cool. And Andy will talk a little bit about how to build that in some more detail. Last two bullets of considerations when doing mobile design is one is to make it social. So this, at the end of the day, this is a social device. I mean, you use it, this is the conduit through which you communicate with everybody that you know. You capture pictures. It houses the music that you love. It's a very personal social device. So don't just think about providing, an application on a mobile phone. Think about creating a conversation around that content on a mobile phone. So we, in addition to allowing the tiles to communicate with the network, we also have one layer above that, a completely viral tile and widget architecture. So every tile that anybody makes, an indie developer, a college kid, a partner like MTV or Amazon, every one of those is a viral object. So you can send and receive tiles to one another. And we actually did a ton of academic research about what's the right way to send content from one phone user to another. We looked at, of course, line of sight and Bluetooth and MMS encapsulation and all this craziness. At the end of the day, again, we had to do the hard engineering task, but it was much, much cleaner on the user flow to build an in-client inbox and outbox. So right within Zumobi, you can actually zap someone a tile. It throws you over the wall to your contact picker. You select the contact, say action. It's actually going to send them a tile through our data center, and it'll show up on their, in Zumobi inbox. So it's this real cool conversation around content that takes place, and then they can actually take that tile and lay it out anywhere in their Zoom space that they will remember easily. Very, very cool. The last kind of tenet of mobile design that I wanted to address is this idea of, we use this word a lot, this idea of lushness. So we actually went through a lot of effort to make sure that our interface and our experience was lush. So rather than taking inspiration from mobile interfaces, and again, this is input I would give when you're designing cool mobile apps on any platform, is really think more about what's happening on a PSP and a DS than what's happening on a BlackBerry. You really want to, this is a consumer experience. You want to engage the user. It's a highly social media. Again, if you're doing an enterprise app, that might be a different perspective. But we're highly consumer focused. We're focused on this kind of rich consumer experience. So we actually took a lot of lead. Our D-pad navigation model, our direct keypad mapping, all of that looks much more like a PSP experience than it does a standard mobile device, up, down, left, right, action, 2 soft keys experience. The other thing that we did is that we actually built our own 2D scene graph. So we have our own rendering subsystem inside the client that wraps all of these tiles. You can use it as a developer because you have 2 canvases available to you, and then our shell has 2 canvases available to us, the Zoom space and the zone view. And then we built our own high frame rate renderer, all actually on top of .NET. When you see the perf, you'll be pretty floored that it's all running on the .NET 1.1 on a mobile phone. So with that as a segue, let me dive in and give you a little bit of a test drive of Zumobi. How many of you have Zumobi? Okay, a couple of people. Good. So hopefully more of you will by the end of the day. Right now we're on Windows Mobile, but we'll be available on BlackBerry and other select J2ME devices soon. So when I launched the Zumobi experience, and again, it's a Zumobi experience. It's a widget platform. We're not focused on being a shell replacement right now. We're not focused on being a browser, a full-fidelity browser that goes to web pages. That's just not what Zumobi is. These are little tiles, little widgets that you create and that users can consume. So right now, you're looking at a user's Zoom space. These are the 16 tiles in my Zoom space. This is a custom Zoom space that I have lovingly crafted by going to gallery.zumobi.com and picking the tiles that kind of speak to my lifestyle. And when I zoom in, so you can see that I can kind of zoom, that there's a little bit of an impedance mismatch between the frame rate of the projector and the camera, but you get a sense of, this is actually a pretty high frame rate render that we've built right here inside Zumobi. You see we have some killer content partners. So there's about 9 tiles from Amazon.com. Of course, we have the Flickr tile. That's totally personalizable, so it can be your Flickr feed. And you'll notice that this is all totally instant. When I zoom into it, everything's kind of cached locally. I never have to wait for a network round trip. We have a 90-10 rule where 90% of your interactions with widgets and with the Zumobi experience should be able to happen without any network touch. Now, when you're personalizing Flickr, or when you're downloading a new tile or something like that, then obviously you need to touch the network. But we're very, very prudent about making as much of the experience be mobile as possible. We have a Family Guy. There's a fun partnership with Fox TV, kind of some basic character animation. It's basically just living wallpaper with eye blinking and some lip sync. I have my audio turned off, but it's basically every day you get a different character and a different quote. This was actually built by an ad agency, by One-to-One Interactive, without a lot of input from us. They actually went off, used our design docs and built this from scratch. We also have, as I mentioned, we have about 9 different tiles from Amazon.com. This one just shows kind of a feed of what toys are hot right now. And the cool thing from Amazon's perspective is that I can zoom all the way into a specific object, and only when I get to that last step, I can read the review of the object and everything, and then only now do I say buy. At that point, it passes me off, throws me over the wall for a purchase transaction on the mobile browser. But mobile commerce is a very impulsive experience, so you really want to try and get them as close to the purchase point as possible before you make that transaction happen. So that's some of the basics of the Zumobi experience. A couple of the deeper details that I'll talk to you a little bit about is that we actually have a couple cool tiles. AP Strange, this is kind of hilarious. There's just a bunch of random strange nuggets. Class ring returned after 33 years. But the cool thing is, let's say I want to send this tile to somebody. So I push the send button, and that's going to actually invoke our own kind of send client. And now I'm going to suggest that I want to send this tile to, in this case, I want to send it to my wife. I can, of course, type out a picture. It's going to say send tile. At this point, it's having a conversation with the Zumobi data center. My wife's running Zumobi, so it just says that he wants to send her that tile. If she doesn't have Zumobi, it recognizes that she's not a Zumobi user, and at that point, it's going to send her an SMS with a download link to install Zumobi. So in that way, it's kind of implicitly viral. Now, what does that look like on the receive side? So on the receive side, we have, both in the zone view and the zoom space view, we have this 0 menu. And the 0 menu shows all the tiles that have been sent to somebody, and we actually have a couple different tabs of the 0 menu. This is my inbox. So if I wanted to take something from inside my inbox and put it into my Zoom space, I think I have all these actually, so I'm going to step over to the deleted tab. This is kind of like an undo tab of where all the things that I've deleted might be in the Zoom space. It's actually syncing, so it's a little sluggish. But so let's say I wanted to replace Amazon Toys with Amazon Search. I action on that. It's going to tell me a little bit more details, the date it was sent to me, who sent it to me. I say action, and then now it's going to say choose a tile to replace, and then I sort of navigate around my Zoom space, decide where I want it to go, and push action. And then at that point, it's not actually, at that point, I haven't actually got the tile code yet. So what it's going to start doing now is it's going to reach out to the network, and it's going to start pulling down the specific tile code for that item. Tiles are extremely lean and mean and small, and once they're local, they start syncing fresh data, so it's totally usable and interactable. So that's kind of a fun viral, round trip viral experience. And there it is. Oh, it's not loaded yet. I noticed that cellular data has not been particularly performant this week. I'm sure you guys have experienced the same. So anyways, that's a rapid overview of the Zumobi experience. You can see that whole time I was using it on a touch screen. I did want to show it to you on a non-touchscreen device, just so you have a sense of the shell experience. So here we have it running on a HTC Vox S710, which is not a touch screen. It's a device with a D-pad and a keypad. And so what I can do is I can navigate around just using the D-pad, and this will take me down into the zone view. But also, we use this interaction flower that kind of ties the user back into the keypad. So the nice thing is once you use Zumobi for a little while and you design your zoom space, I can look from the zone view within 2 taps. I can say I want to go into the traffic tile, and it'll take me directly into there, and I can see what traffic conditions are like in Seattle in that case. And then again, I can zoom back out. So this is running on a device that's only about 200 megahertz. It's about half the performance of the other device, yet our frame rate is still pretty good. And of course, it also has integrated tile send and receive and all those features, et cetera. So, this is a portrait device, but as I mentioned, we also work on landscape and square devices. And the last thing that I wanted to show you is that we do real-time adaptation on the client and your tiles. So if you have a landscape device, then the tiles themselves will adapt to the appropriate resolution, take optimal advantage. In landscape view of zoom space and zone view, we actually didn't want to do a reflow layout because our research showed that you want to really reinforce that 4x4 grid and keep people in that grid. That's why, for example, we don't allow wrapping. You can't wrap around because we want to really reinforce kind of where you are in that zoom space. So as a result, we kind of keep you in that paradigm of 4x4 grid. But we eat up the Windows toolbar so that we have enough real estate for that. Okay, so that's a quick overview of Zumobi and kind of setting up what Zumobi looks like and what it feels like. What I want to do is I want to transition back to the PC, and I want to invite Shannon up to talk a little bit about what designing a tile looks like from our perspective, and she's actually going to take you through one of our designs with a partner and how that worked. So,
how do I turn on?
I think you should be on.
Okay. So John gave you a pretty good overview of designing for mobile, but I'm going to get a little bit deeper into designing for Zumobi. The things that kind of make good tiles are things that have fresh content, using existing RSS feeds, things like news, weather, sports. Also, games and animation have been some of our most popular tiles, I think. John mentioned the Family Guy, which is very popular, and we have Blackjack and Hangman and things like that. The last one really is using existing web APIs. So you can tie into REST and SOAP APIs, and it cuts down on dev time since they already exist. And you can get really highly personalized content to people. I was going to show you, just walk through the MTV News tile. This was something MTV came to us and asked us to do. They wanted to take their news, games, and movies content on mobile. And so what we did was basically just come up with kind of an information architecture for news stories. Basically what it is an RSS feed that they had. And so we take, there we go. We basically take their content. These are all their news stories and the photo that comes with it. And then we have 3 views here. So this is kind of our zoom space view. All views are dynamic. So you can have for instance, like our AccuWeather tile shows an icon of what the weather is like outside in the zoom space view. So you don't actually even have to zoom into the full view to see the weather or to get a little overview. And then we have this zone view, which also is dynamic content, and it's really good for news. A lot of news stories, you can kind of put a picture there. The user knows it's up to date. The user knows there's a new story. And then we have a full view. And this is straight from MTV News, an RSS feed that they have. And basically, it's the newest photo, the newest story. And the user can select that and go into what we have here, which is called a detail view. This has a larger photo and then shows the story. Also in this view, we have these nudge buttons up here. This is actually not correct. Usually these are kind of forward and back buttons. So the user can just go forward and back through the stories really quickly and easily without having to come out to a different view and select another story. So one of the other things we really noticed that was important in Zumobi was really easy and quick access to content. So when we got this project, for instance, we had considered just putting all of the content into one tile and having like kind of one MTV tile. But what we found is that it starts getting really complicated, and people have it's much more difficult for them to get to the content that they need. So what we did was we ended up splitting them out into 3 different tiles and kind of giving them the same visual language, but kind of color coding them so that people could read on their Zoom Space view quickly and easily which tile is which. We also did this for Amazon. I think John showed you the Amazon tile. Originally, we tried to do that all in one tile, and there were there was toys, search, books, DVDs, and what happened was people just, it took them so long to get to the content that they wanted that they just got really frustrated. So we ended up breaking them out into 9 separate tiles, and now people that want to go search books can just get the content they want easily without having to kind of go through DVDs, which they may not care about. So this is how we ended up doing the MTV tile into 3 separate tiles, and it's much easier and quicker to get to content, and people are really, this is a really great tile. Ooh. And it looks like I just crashed. So just a moment.
Awesome. Cool. Actually, we can't blame Microsoft for this. We're running this in VMware on a Mac. So as you might have seen, this is actually the world's only Zumobi book. You can see I imported some Italian rosewood and plasma cut the Zumobi flower to fit inside the apple. Totally gratuitous. But, so we're rebooting now. I did want to actually center on some key points that were mentioned. One is that there's 4 zoom levels. So again, the zoom space view, the zone view, the full view, and the detail view, which makes for a laughably easy interaction architecture. So whether you're designing for log on. So whether you're designing for a Flickr type tile where you're zooming in and you're going to look at a picture, or you're doing a news story or whatever, that makes it very, very easy to design. However, you don't have to use all 4 zoom levels. So you can actually have just a tile, the full view of the tile be the last view, and like Family Guy, or we have what is Indecision 2008. Some of these tiles that are very basic, a little nugget of information. 1 zoom level is totally sufficient. So that's very cool. And dive back in.
So and then the last thing that I really just the last point on design is that we do support 3 different resolutions. So we have square and landscape and portrait. And Zumobi can sniff the resolution of the user's phone. So you can display the content differently for each resolution. Or if you want, you can design for square and kind of be a lazy designer and not and have it show up the same in all 3. But that's another advantage that Zumobi really has. Designing for Zumobi is really easy to get content looking good on any resolution phone.
Yeah, it's very fast. Okay, good. Here we go. Sorry about that.
No.
We're coming up right now. Go ahead. Okay. So the another thing. So you're probably wondering why expression. So we actually decided when we started the company that we were going to really enforce a very consistent integrated architecture and design paths. Because think about it, these tiles, number one, as Shannon mentioned, they're all leveraging existing server feeds. So you all probably design widgets all the time. This is a very common convention. They might or might not sync locally. Most of them don't. So in our world, we wanted to just basically build the minimum piece that you need to be able to consume that content on a mobile phone. So it's lightweight and it's fast. However, what we did was, designing for like the Amazon tiles are actually fairly sophisticated. They're not RSS feeds. They do full web services interop. They're using, Amazon has a really elegant REST API. The Amazon team didn't have to write a single line of code on the server side for all those tiles to take life, including the passing off to the transaction to the one-click page for that particular item. All that stuff was done, again, without a line of code on the server side. So that's actually a very cool and very efficient way to write these tiles. So what we do is when you go to, Expression is actually a great tool. It's, a great on-ramp to be able to dive in and start building a tile. And what we do is we actually slice directly from Expression. We're not using XAML at this point because, again, Mobile Silverlight is brand new. But we do actually use Expression for our integrated architecture. So we don't use Visio. We actually use Expression or Illustrator or some graphic design tool that's pixel accurate for the architecture. Because if you're designing a tile, it's basically a tiny, tiny website. You can design a tile in a long weekend. It's super, super efficient. So we basically have an integrated design and dev, design and architecture pass. Shannon, was there anything else that you had?
No, I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
Okay, good. So then, of course, once you've architected it out, so we did that tile that Shannon just showed, together with MTV, architected it out, passed off the file, the total master file off to MTV for design approval, and then we basically dive into the MTV emulator.
So just I can gauge the audience. How many of you are programmers? Okay, good. I can get into the good code stuff. So I come from a background of Flash. Like I kind of taught myself Flash in high school, and these guys picked me up right outside of college. So I don't have like any really strict like C# or any real JavaScript background, and I just dropped right into Zumobi's programming because it's basically ECMA, right? I think that's I'm not a true programmer, I guess, but each tile has two different files that really define what it is. There's there's a XML file and a JavaScript file, and the XML is kind of the architecture, kind of like the foundation of the tile. Here you can see where, I guess you can't see. I'll give you an example in the actual program first. This is our kind of like desktop version of Zumobi. What you see here is pretty much exactly what's going to be on the phone. This isn't a emulator of any kind, I guess. It's like this is the Zumobi experience. So you can, if I drill down into Flickr here, each one of these is like a different element. One of the coolest things about our little emulator is that you can pop open several different editors and get a look at your basic structure of your tile. And if I drill down here into the Flickr tile, you can kind of see a red rectangle selecting the different elements that are on each canvas. Here's like the full canvas. Flickr is one of the tiles that has the three different levels. I can go into the picture. This is a detail view, and you can nudge left and right to see, like, have the canvas be updated with a different picture. I'm going to have to refresh this window, actually. And so yeah, it's a great way to debug because you have access to every single element on your canvas. You can even go as far as changing the text fields or moving X and Y values around to get like pixel perfect accuracy when you're trying to program. You don't have to recompile every single time to finalize your layout. So that was let's see, it's the mix tile I have open? No, MTV, okay. So here's the MTV code right next to the actual running tile. As Shannon was saying, each tile has like 3 different levels. There's the quarter canvas, which is kind of our zone view. That's what you're seeing right here. And all this really is an image. The Family Guy tile is a little different. It has well, actually, no. Family Guy tile is no different. The Flickr tile has like a different image every single time. This is the first image there. So you have a lot of customizability in each level of tile. Here's the full canvas code, which is much more complicated. As I said, this is the XML, where it's just essentially laying the foundation. There's no actual interactivity going on in the XML. All that is taking place in the JavaScript file. And the JavaScript file is real meat and potatoes. It's all you see here is the standard JavaScript. If you know JavaScript, you can really jump right in. Most of the interactivity, or actually all the interactivity, is going on in there. One of my actually favorite parts, going back again, is the different windows you can bring up. So like the debug window will list everything that's going on inside your entire zoom space. And it's extremely useful. If an exception is thrown, you can catch it pretty easily. And it really makes it a breeze to bring your tiles up to speed. Another neat thing about our environment is that you can switch between the 3 resolutions we support just with a click of the button. Right now we're at the square resolution, and here we are on landscape just almost instantly. Each tile is designed, there's the on resize handler here is what catches the switch. So if you have one of those fancy phones where you can switch the resolutions, it'll automatically, you can write the code here to automatically lay it out correctly. There are various ways to do this. Like, I'm pretty sure that the MTV News tile only just resizes the length of the text boxes and stuff. There's nothing really fancy going on. But in something like the Family Guy tile, like, a lot of thought had to be put into, like, it's pretty large assets. It's one of our larger tiles. And we decided not to have like 3 different images for each character. We have just one solid background. If I can pull up the scene graph window, probably won't be able to, won't matter. But there's just one large, I think it's 320 by 320 image that we're just keeping the camera in the center of so that everything has the same view. We don't have to switch out assets. It keeps the footprint relatively small, which is something that you should take into consideration because it is a mobile device, and you need to keep things pretty small. Got another tile code up here, our slot machine tile. Interactivity is a big thing. I think some of our best tiles are our games, which I am particularly fond of making. Like, I kind of see the ideal tile being either a quick news story you can go to. Like, you just, like, the bus is like the ideal time to be using Zumobi, so you can just like check on something or play a game to pass like the 30 minutes or however long your bus ride is. If I go into the code for this tile, there are several different functions that each tile has. There's like an initialize function, an on resize to catch the resize, and we have like a kind of main loop when for animation. We've got an animation system. It's not quite as robust as Flash, or actually I haven't even touched Silverlight to know what that's like. But we can at least, we can't guarantee a frame rate, but we can kind of interpolate to make sure that things aren't going awry. Not a whole lot of tiles use animation at the moment. I'm trying to think of others that do. There's a Family Guy one that does. He blinks and chatters. But all in all, you can make some pretty compelling games, like here's a Hangman. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. So, and actually, Andy, stick up here because we want to make as much of the session Q&A as possible because you are developers and might have specific questions. I did want to mention two things. The Mix slot machine tile, sort of in the spirit of us being here in Vegas, was actually built completely by a partner. So that was built by Pop, which is an interactive agency in Seattle. We set them off to create this tile. They downloaded the SDK, they just partied on it and built that tile, including animation and different resolutions and all that. And they did an awesome job. They're up to speed on creating tiles. I showed the Family Guy tile. There's also One-to-One Interactive in Boston and One-to-One Labs have both created tiles as well. So I want to quickly show you just kind of as a next steps whether if you're a developer and want to dive into the Zumobi experience, where do you go to learn more? So if you fly by dev.zumobi.com, you'll see that this is everything you need to get started. Of course, it's totally free. So the SDK that we were just playing with, this thing that actually allows you can actually run all these different windows and the render itself on your desktop. By the way, this, as Andy mentioned, this is not the Windows Mobile emulator. This is the full Zumobi test app, which means that once you build a tile that conforms to kind of our Zumobi design, it will run consistently on BlackBerry, J2ME, Windows Mobile, all of those, because that's already been abstracted inside our scripting environment. We have our own scripting environment, basically. So this is not the Windows Mobile emulator. This is our own kind of Zumobi-specific emulator, and that is downloadable right from here. So that's this. The SDK tutorials are awesome. We actually spent a lot of time, hired a small army of tech writers to write up some detailed SDK tutorials. We also have some sample tiles, so you can look at a couple of sample code and source code examples. A full SDK reference is available. And then you actually can manage your feeds. So if you're doing RSS provisioning, you can do that directly right here inside Zumobi, which is very cool, kind of a subset of the functionality that you might find on Yahoo Pipes or something like that. So you can actually configure your own feeds right there in the site as a developer. And then, of course, participate in the forums, very active dialogue in the forums, and we have a pretty active blog as well. As an end user, this is the gallery. So these are all the tiles that are in our current Zoom space, and they're separated by category. And you can basically navigate around. This is a simple little Ajax interface for looking at. We have Woot and Yelp and a bunch of very, very fun tiles. Some fun tiles for kids, some great games tiles. A pretty wide array of different tiles in our environment. And the cool thing is it's totally integrated. So if you want to send it to your phone, you click, one click, send to my phone. It'll show up in the inbox of your phone. And then you decide in your Zoom space where you want to put it. So very, very useful. In terms of if you're intrigued and you want to party on it as a developer, we would love to have you at dev.zumobi.com. We'd love to have you playing with tiles and thinking about creating tiles. And if, as a user, how many of you have Winmo devices, Windows mobile devices? A large majority of you. Just from your mobile, from your IE mobile browser, just go to get.zumobi.com right now, and you can download the app. It's totally free. Obviously, you want an all-you-can-eat data plan. But with the exception of data fees, the application is totally free. We're on an ad-based business model. Actually, a quick point on that. This is kind of a cool twist as well. You might have noticed that there's two different types of tiles. So one of the tiles is a split tile, which is this, where the tile canvas has complete control in all resolutions over this area, which we call the tile surface. And then we'll serve an MMA standard ad. We're a member of the Mobile Advertising Association, so we'll serve an MMA standard ad in here for you, which is cool. But then if there's a brand like, there's Stewie, cool. Occasionally he makes a celebrity guest appearance. Anyways, in this case, you'll notice there's no ad because this is actually an ad. So Full Tile is a branded experience. Companies like Fox and Amazon and others that actually have very strict brand standards. They don't want anyone's ad being served into their environment. That's fine. We totally support that, and they can build a full ad. So if you're an agency and you start talking to your partners and they start using the word mobile and they're wondering how they can get reach and how, there really aren't that many mobile widget platforms out there, as I'm sure you found. But I can say with some degree of confidence that when you take a look at the depth of our SDK, this is much more sophisticated than most of the kind of largely text-based mobile widget platforms that are out there. And if you're, as Andy mentioned, if you're a Flash developer or if you're a web dev, this will be totally second nature to you and feel very natural. So with that, I want to transition over and allow some time for Q&A and some dialogue. If you have questions either on the design side or the dev side or the platform side, let's take a little bit of time and take some questions. Yeah.
I think it's great technology for consumers, you said at the beginning, but I can see
Yeah, great question. So the question was, the fun consumer application, but there's also applications in the enterprise. We totally agree. Namely, sort of corporate portals. Everything from what's playing on the lunch menu to what's on the lunch menu to what are the details of the holiday party. Whatever things you'd find on an intranet, you want on your phone. It's a perfect application for that, especially since it's synchronized. So we actually have a couple examples of partners that are doing that. So because we spun out of Microsoft, Microsoft is a great partner of ours. They're actually a great distribution partner as well for us. And a lot of Microsoft employees have Zumobi on their phones and live on it. So we actually we're working together with Microsoft to build a couple of employee portals as tiles, which is really easy. The data exists. We just plug into that. And we also have a relationship with Accenture. So for exactly the same reason, they have a couple of employee blogs that people read. So we actually have built, together with their agency, a couple of Accenture tiles, which is very cool. So I agree with you. We're trying to be very, very disciplined about what features we bring to the surface in sequence. So right now, we talked about kind of basic animation system, content synchronization, all that. The next step, there's a couple platform features. One of them is kind of more robust synchronization security. So, whenever you talk about an intranet corporate portal, security is very important, which is why right now tiles are limited to just kind of that public, employee type feeds where it's not super security sensitive. But we will be adding a more robust transactional platform on in the future, as well as some of the other platform features that, of course, I'm sure you can imagine, like location-based services and video and other things. But right now, we're being extremely disciplined about making sure that every single feature of a tile is explicitly cross-device, cross-platform, cross-carrier. So you as a developer don't have to think about, camera interop or contact interop. We basically black box that to make sure that if you're sitting at a bar and you send someone a tile, it's going to work totally consistently. So. Good question. Yeah, great question. So the question is, can the tiles be set free? Can I host the tiles directly from the enterprise or from my device? Two things. Number one, unfortunately, all these phones primarily connect. Sometimes they connect through Wi-Fi, but the vast sweeping majority, when they're drinking down data, they're doing it over a cellular network. So even if you have something on the intranet, it's going to touch the outside when it flows through the cellular carrier anyway. So that doesn't bias too much. But we are actually in a next iteration. This is, by the way, this is pretty hot off the presses. So this is a February 14th build, brand new. This is the first development audience that we've spoken to. This is a 1-2 punch. We're going to South by Southwest tonight, and we're doing a developer talk tomorrow there. So this is very, very new technology. So as a result, we don't yet have some of those features online, but it definitely will be coming. So, yeah. Good question. For now, again, in the short term, we are focusing most of our development efforts, because we're an advertising platform, we're deployed in North America today, mainly because of the content partners and the ad agencies that we're buzzed up with. And Symbian doesn't have as much penetration here, so but actually, we do address a large number of the devices, like the the N95. Some of these devices run Zumobi incredibly well through our J2ME build. Again, that's not shipping yet. That'll be shipping next quarter. Together with BlackBerry at the same time. So that's our path for Symbian for now. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of interest for European carriers, because they're all looking to dip their toe into mobile advertising, and they're all very thirsty for a mobile widget platform. We just came back from Barcelona, had great discussions with European carriers, and it's quite possible in the future that we might address Symbian more natively. Yeah.
Quick question. I just downloaded it to my phone, and I get a big black screen that says Zumobi requires 10 megs.
Right.
Is there some minimum mobile standard that you need to have? I bought this phone about 3 weeks ago.
Right, yeah.
Now, I don't have a mini SD or anything, but can you address any issues?
Sure, totally.
That?
Two things. So you're right. We actually, the entire time from the December 12th release to the February 14th release of Zumobi, we've been working almost exclusively on footprint and perf, but our work is not done. And in fact, we don't use 10 megs. That misrepresents the footprint. But we do use a lot. So we actually need a fairly big RAM footprint. That dialog box is specifically about RAM. So you might find that if you kill a couple of apps and relaunch, it'll work. So we recognize that's an issue. We continue to address it. Actually, the great dialogue on the forums. We got that feedback very early on. Another piece of feedback we got from our forums was being able to run on an SD card, because a large number of mobile device owners also have an SD card. What takes up a lot of space on our app, actually be pretty impressed. The app itself is impossibly small because the synchronization architecture, the ad server, and the rendering engine all fit in less than half a meg. What takes up space is the store, right? Because you essentially have 16 tiny little mobile apps that are running. And we're very prudent about the footprint of the tiles, but there's just a lot going on. There's a lot happening in this app. So we are kind of aiming at this kind of device footprint that you'll be seeing in mid-2008 to Christmas 2008. So it is, some of the current generation devices have a little bit too low of a ceiling for the current generation of our app. However, we do now have a support as of 2.14. As part of the install procedure, you can say that you want to put it on your memory card. And we actually will put not just the XE, but also your entire store on the memory card. It means you need the card to run it, but it will run, the whole store will run on the card, which is nice. So that's a new feature. But again, we recognize we have a lot of continued work to do on that. Yes?
Which do you propose? Because I'm at 90% of my download here. Should I store it on my card then?
Totally. If you have a card, no-brainer, absolutely, yeah. Very, very small perf hit, but once it's in RAM, it's a non-issue. So yeah, totally installed on your card. Yeah.
Where do you get the MIX gadget from?
Do that again, I'm sorry?
The MIX gadget that you showed? Where
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you asked. Two ways. Number one, you can come to any of the Zumobians afterwards, and we'll send it to you virally, and then you can send it on. And or if you just fly by gallery.zumobi.com using the ID that you just created as part of the mobile install on a desktop machine, just go to gallery.zumobi.com, and you can actually send it. You can see it right there on the screen. So you can just click send to my phone once you're logged in as you, and it'll say just send this to my phone. So. You can get it that way. It's actually quite addictive. Oh, and the cool thing about, again, this is the MIX gadget that Pop built. The cool thing about it is that you actually can win, not cash, I'm sorry, but you can win. It'll say, you'll sort of get a key code to send off to Zumobi, and you'll get gratuitous Zumobi swag from us in the mail. But it is quite hard to win, so good luck. Yes? It's actually, so that's an awesome question. The cool thing is, once the SDK is out there, we want to let 1,000 tiles bloom. We're not going to be in the business of deciding what's cool. This is just a viral platform, so we're getting a lot of input, for example, from universities. Universities who they don't really need to build a mobile app. They just want to build this little data collection thing for surveys, for example, and they want it to run on BlackBerry and Windows Mobile. So this is actually an awesome platform for that. So absolutely, you could totally do that. In terms of hooking into the, some of the data capture equipment on the phone, whether it's GPS or camera, those APIs aren't part of the platform yet. But for text input, it's great. Yeah, absolutely. Great recommendation. And in fact, if we do that, we'd love to hear from you. So, other questions? Yeah.
If you were an online site with existing registration and user-based to manage your information, everything you do will be as safe for when you get like this, like tiles and your information.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that we do that most often, we actually kind of follow the Facebook model. So you might, on initial, the first time you touch a tile, you might have to fly by IE Mobile. And the tile can actually be programmed to throw you over the wall to IE Mobile. You'll have to build a little XHTML site for authentication so that you can actually get authenticated on the browser side and get a unique session ID. And then once you go back into the tile will be authenticated. We're trying to be very hypersensitive and to make sure there aren't malicious tiles. We're not doing authentication in the client now. You can imagine that's an obvious feature for the future, but in the current version, we don't allow in-tile authentication. But many of our tiles do user-specific things. As I mentioned, that was my tile feed from Mix, my Flickr feed from Mix. So you can customize content, but when it requires authentication, right now we do that through the browser for Amazon and Facebook and others. Great question. Other questions? Is anybody writing mobile widgets right now? Interesting. Yeah. So, okay, Sam. What platform are you using? iPhone. Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's actually, it's interesting. There's this interesting shift that's happening where, at least in our experience, we spent a lot of time because we launched our alpha at CTIA way back in April, and the alpha was specifically for ad agencies. So we wanted to kind of see what ad agencies wanted as a mobile widget platform, and they helped us design what you see here. All the difference in inventories and the standards, all that was informed by the agencies like Razorfish with whom we partnered. And one of the things that we're hearing from all these agencies is that, rewind the clock a year, the mobile budgets and particularly the mobile widget budgets were highly experimental. It was, whatever a brand would have as sort of an experimental budget, they'd take a piece of it and say, yeah, do something fun and mobile, and that would happen. But now what we're seeing is these mobile branded widgets are starting to cannibalize some of their radio buy, because it's a mobile way to, no one's listening to radio. Everybody has, their music player earbuds in at all times. So now this is a different way to kind of reach out to the mobile user. So I think you might see, particularly if you're a web dev shop, you might see an increasing interest in mobile apps. Certainly the iPhone client is one path, and yesterday's announcements are interesting. Mobile Silverlight is another way to do this, but the good news about Zumobi is you can party on it right now. So you can go fly by and download the SDK. In just a few months, we'll be addressing against Windows Mobile, BlackBerry, and certain J2ME devices. So we're really focused on a certain demographic of user that has an all-you-can-eat data plan. There probably may be an enterprise employee that actually has all-you-can-eat data paid for by their company, and they only use it for enterprise email. But we knowledge workers have lives, as it turns out, as well. So it's appropriate to have a consumer application as well. And the Windows Mobile team has been absolutely awesome. They've been great about really embracing this as Windows Mobile really becomes more of a consumer platform, really embracing this as a consumer offering. Yeah. Well, we're not announcing downloads, although we will say that we met our goal for the end of January within the first 48 hours that it was on the web. So we actually have gotten an incredible uptake. But what we are announcing is that we have had incredible depth, our touch has been much higher than we had expected. So the sort of per user time in Zumobi. And by the way, this app is really cool because it's totally instrumented. So every time you zoom into a tile, the full view, the detailed views, which tiles you have in your zoom space, where you are, all that's being captured, cached on the store, and then trickled back up to our data centers. So it's really cool. We can tell which are the most viral tiles. All that is very, very cool data, so we can make the app better, essentially. As a result, we're actually seeing that people are using this app a hell of a lot. And you'll see, once you kind of have Zumobi running in the background, it's so much more refreshing way to consume the blogs you love than to go over to the browser and wait for the round trip. I think you'll dig it. So our sessions have been higher. Our penetration has been very, very good, but we're not announcing any numbers until we get to J2ME. But we are partnered with Microsoft and other distribution partners to get to market very, very quickly. And we actually have now over 100 tiles, so you can pretty wide array of tiles that are out there. And we hope that after this conference in South by Interactive this weekend, that there will be many thousands of tiles that are much more brilliant than anything we could conceive because of partnering with today's leaders of business and technology and design. So we're thrilled to have you playing on the SDK. So anyways, let us know what you think. Please fly by the forums, give us some feedback, and play with the SDK. 100% of the features from December to February, 100% of them came from developer and user feedback on the forums. So we are an extremely feedback-oriented organization. We welcome you. Actually, Sue Schmitz is in the front row. If you read the Zumobi forums, you probably know her because she's a very active participant, and she really is very good about feeding back that to the Zumobi development team. So thanks very much for your time.